Serena's high school sweetheart wanted to revitalize his career following a messy divorce. To facilitate this, my wife took the lead role I had already secured and handed it to him, forcing me to step down and serve as his stunt double. The fans of her first love immediately took to the internet to tear me apart, making me a trending topic for all the most humiliating reasons. They asked why it mattered that I was a newly awarded Best Actor, claiming I was nothing more than Julian's stuntman now. I chose to stay silent, quietly accepting Serena's decision without a fight. Sometime later, there was a terrible accident on the set. My wife was severely burned while trying to shield Julian's face from the flames. I was absolutely devastated by the news. She held me close, whispering softly to comfort me, saying that it was all right because she was a director, not an actor, and didn't need to rely on her appearance to make a living. I pushed her away, tears streaming down my face, and told her that it was her face I loved. I asked her what I was supposed to do now that she didn't look like herself anymore. When Serena announced that the film was getting a new leading man, I was already strapped into the wire harness, prepared to film a combat sequence. Just as I got into the starting position, the crew lowered me back to the ground. I was confused, unsure of what was going on, but I could feel the strange, pitying glances from everyone around me. An assistant named Chloe ran over to me, looking like she was on the verge of tears, and told me there was bad news. Serena had just announced they were replacing the lead actor. Before I could even process the information, I was pulled into the dressing room where Serena and Julian were waiting. Julian looked exhausted, wearing a casual white suit, his eyes red and swollen. Serena looked at him with absolute sympathy. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. She told me that Julian was divorced and wanted to make a comeback, so she had decided to let him take over my role. It became clear that everything was being orchestrated to clear a path for her first love. Julian's divorce had been a trending topic for days, and Serena hadn't seemed to react at all. I assumed she had moved on from him, but evidently that wasn't the case. A bitter lump formed in my throat that I couldn't swallow. I sniffled and reminded Serena that I loved this role, that I hadn't taken any other work for months because I was studying the script and training in Kung Fu. Julian suddenly interrupted, asking Serena if there were a lot of fight scenes in the movie. Serena nodded, admitting that yes, there were, and some were quite dangerous. Julian looked nervous and told her that he hadn't acted in a long time. Serena gave him a reassuring look before turning back to me. She said that since I had already been training, I could stay on as Julian's stunt double. I laughed out of pure frustration. Not only was she taking away my lead role, but she also expected me to do the dangerous work for him. I asked her if she thought I was a pushover. She frowned slightly, asking if I was unwilling. I told her of course I wasn't willing. I reminded her that just last week I had won Best Actor. I asked if she really wanted a newly crowned Best Actor to serve as someone's stunt double, telling her I would become a joke in the industry. She smirked at me then, asking so what? She asked if winning one award made me forget where I came from. She claimed that if Julian hadn't let me be his body double for nude scenes in the past, nobody would even know who I was. It was true that my first job in the industry was as Julian's body double. For a scene that lasted less than 3 seconds in the final movie, I had been naked, kneeling in freezing snow for 3 hours. It happened because someone commented that my body was great, even better than Julian's. I shivered instinctively and glanced at Julian. He patted Serena's shoulder lightly, telling her not to say such things. He told me not to blame Serena, that she was just trying to help him because his family was going through a hard time. His wife had left him, and he really needed a chance to bounce back. I looked at him blankly and asked, so what? I asked if it was acceptable for him to come crying to my wife, steal my role, and call it okay. I called him a homewrecker. Julian's eyes filled with tears instantly. Serena was furious and slapped me hard across the face. She demanded to know what nonsense I was spouting, insisting Julian was not a homewrecker. I covered my stinging cheek, staring at her in disbelief, asking if she had really just hit me. She looked at her own hand, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But then Julian tugged on her sleeve, looking teary-eyed, and told her not to blame me. He said it was his fault for asking for help. Serena's expression hardened again. She told me I should be grateful to be Julian's double. She said if I didn't look slightly like him, she never would have noticed me in the first place. She claimed that without her, a penniless orphan like me wouldn't even make it through the door of the industry, let alone get a lead role. What she said was technically true, and I couldn't argue with the facts, but I wasn't going to give in. I refused to be Julian's double. Seeing my resistance, Serena resorted to blackmail. She asked if I wanted my career to end with my last movie. I looked up sharply, meeting her cold eyes. It felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my heart, making it ache physically. I closed my eyes and told her fine, I would do whatever she said. Serena chuckled and hugged me, saying that was more like it. She promised that as long as I listened, she would make me the lead in all her future films. So, Julian made a grand return after his divorce, replacing the newly crowned Best Actor Caleb as the lead in Serena's new film. To repay past kindness, Caleb volunteered to be Julian's stunt double. I was potentially the first Best Actor in history to work as a stunt double. These topics shot to the top of the trending searches like a rocket. Julian's fans threw all kinds of sarcasm my way. They said it didn't matter if I was a new Best Actor, I was still just a stand-in for their Julian. They pointed out that Julian was Serena's first love, the one she couldn't have, while poor Caleb was just a substitute both on and off camera. Even some random bystanders couldn't help but comment on the situation. They said it was one thing for the main character to steal my man, but making the new Best Actor do the stunt work seemed insane. They asked if Serena had lost her mind, noting she would do anything for her first love. They also pointed out that Julian wasn't innocent either, hooking up with Serena right after his divorce. Julian's fans maintained an overwhelming sense of superiority, saying his life was great because people were willing to spoil him, and asking who would choose a fake when the real deal was back. Since I had warned my fans to stay quiet, they didn't engage, even though they were upset. I didn't say a word, letting Julian's fans have their moment. Being mocked on trending searches was embarrassing, but it had benefits too. A very popular variety show reached out to me. My manager, Arthur, was overjoyed and quickly arranged for me to go. Who knew I would be stopped by Serena halfway there? She told me I didn't need to go to the variety show taping because she had already talked to the team, and Julian was going instead. She said he needed the attention more right now, and that I was coming with her to the set to shoot a scene for Julian. When I arrived at the set, I discovered it wasn't a stunt scene. In the story, after the country collapsed, the main character, the Queen's most valued son, was captured, tortured, and humiliated in public by the enemy army. There were nude scenes, and because the other actors were extras, Julian didn't want to shoot it. Arthur was furious. He said it was bad enough to stand in as a stunt double, but now they wanted me to be a body double too. He refused to allow it. Serena, however, couldn't care less. She asked what the big deal was, reminding everyone that I used to be Julian's body double anyway. She said we signed a double contract, and whether it was body or stunt, a double is a double. She turned to me, pleading slightly, saying the camera was rolling, and if the scene didn't get done, the financial losses would be huge. She asked me to help her out. Serena possessed the beauty of a top movie star. Her features were perfect, especially with that red tear mole under her left eye. It looked like a twinkling star. I couldn't resist when she gave me that look, a mixture of a plea and playfulness. I reached up, gently touched the mole under her eye, and smiled, agreeing to do it. The extras were professionals, so the scene didn't take long to shoot. However, it was a freezing winter day, and being exposed to the elements for so long took a toll on me. That night, I developed a high fever. Through the haze of sickness, I felt a cold hand on my forehead. Serena's voice sounded tender as she wondered why I was so hot. She told me to wake up so she could take me to the hospital. I opened my eyes and saw her struggling to get me out of bed and support my weight. Memories flooded back of a time when someone else had looked after me like this during a fever, staying up with me all night. Just as we left the garage, Serena's phone rang. The sound snapped me back to reality. It was Julian. She asked him what was wrong, telling him not to panic because she was on her way. After hanging up, she looked worried and told me Julian's dog was missing and he was crying, so she needed to go see him immediately. She pulled the car over and told me to get out and wait at the security booth. She said she would call my manager to take me to the hospital. My head was foggy, but I followed her instructions and stepped out. A cold wind blew, and I could barely stand. Serena didn't even look back before speeding off in her pink Porsche. Watching the car disappear made me tear up. I realized she wasn't the same person I thought she was. Arthur was a reliable manager, and I didn't wait long before he arrived to take care of me. He cursed under his breath when he realized Serena wasn't there. I didn't say a word, just stared blankly at Julian's latest social media post titled, "Lost and Found." The picture showed a dog held by slender, pale hands. I recognized them immediately as Serena's, seeing a ring identical to mine on her finger. Julian's post trended quickly. People began speculating about the identity of the woman with the wedding ring. Julian eventually replied, telling everyone not to overthink it, that she was just helping him find his dog. Coincidentally, someone posted a photo of me getting an IV in the hospital at the same time. Julian's fans were overjoyed, mocking me by saying Serena would rather find a dog than stay with me at the hospital. They said it was clear who she cared about, calling me a joke and saying I was less important than a dog. I touched my ring, decided to take it off, and tossed it into the trash without a second thought. Serena didn't come home all night. The next day, she sent someone to bring me to the set again, saying I had to shoot a water scene for Julian. I couldn't believe it. I had a fever of 104 degrees the night before, which still hadn't gone down, and now she wanted me in the water. Serena only glanced at the fever patch on my forehead and told me to relax, claiming the water was warm. I laughed bitterly and asked why, if the water was warm, Julian couldn't do it himself. As soon as I said it, Julian walked over, apologizing for bothering me, but claiming his old back injury had flared up. He said the doctor advised against him getting in the water. I told him I couldn't accept that excuse. I said that in our circle, many actors pushed through injuries to keep filming. I mentioned that I once shot an entire day of fight scenes with a cracked rib. Julian's eyes welled up with tears. He asked if I was saying he wasn't dedicated enough, then said fine, he didn't need my help and would shoot it himself. He ran toward the pool like a stubborn child. But after a few steps, he clutched his lower back and crouched down, groaning in pain. Serena rushed over, full of concern, and helped him up. She told him tenderly not to push himself if he was injured. Then she turned to me, her expression icy cold, and told me I was being too difficult. She ordered me to film the scene and said it better be good enough for both of them. Maybe to punish me for being stubborn, they made me redo the scene over and over. Either Julian thought my dive wasn't stylish enough, or Serena thought my expressions were off. The warm water in the pool gradually turned cold, freezing by the end. I felt like a robot, repeating the stunt again and again. My body grew heavier, and my consciousness faded. Eventually, everything went black, and I passed out completely. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. Someone rushed over, dropping to their knees by the bed and holding me tight. It was Serena. Her eyes were red and panic-stricken, and her voice trembled with tears as she said she was scared to death. When I woke up fully, Arthur and Chloe were there fussing over me along with Serena. Arthur explained that the doctor said I fainted from acute pneumonia caused by being in ice-cold water for too long. Serena was incredibly upset and had cried a lot. She kept apologizing, saying if she had known, she wouldn't have let me do the scene. She blamed herself, slapping her own face repeatedly in regret. Watching the face I was so captivated by become red and swollen softened my heart instantly. I caught her hand and gently rubbed the tear mole at the corner of her eye, telling her not to hit herself. I told her if she kept it up, her face wouldn't be beautiful anymore. Serena was touched, kissing my hand and telling me how important I was to her. She said when she pulled me out of the pool, she was terrified I would never wake up. She asked me to promise not to leave her. I smiled and patted her shoulder, saying nothing. Serena seemed like a different person during my hospital stay. She took care of everything herself. Even when Julian came with a fruit basket, she was polite but distant, telling him I needed rest and asking him to leave. Julian looked surprised and hurt. He awkwardly asked if she could walk him out because he had something to discuss. Serena looked at me silently. Not wanting to hear their conversation, I nodded. She said she would be quick and followed him out. In less than 5 minutes, she was back, looking strange. She told me Julian asked to borrow $2 million. It turned out that, on the day I did the water scene, someone on the staff secretly recorded it and was using the footage to blackmail him. What puzzled me was why Julian would ask Serena for money. Even though he was divorced, his father, Robert, was connected to Edward, a massive business tycoon, and Julian was a trust fund kid. Seeing my confusion, Serena hesitated before explaining that Julian wasn't actually Edward's grandson. Half a year ago, Julian's father, Robert, was diagnosed with leukemia and needed a transplant. Matches were hard to find. Edward's daughter couldn't stand seeing her husband decline, so she had Julian tested. The match failed, but Edward noticed something impossible in the blood type report. He did a paternity test and found out Julian wasn't his grandchild. Enraged, Edward investigated and discovered that Robert had started an affair with a woman named Patricia soon after marriage. On the day his wife gave birth, Robert swapped the babies. Listening to this, the only thought I had was that reality was more dramatic than fiction. Serena sighed, noting that Julian was dealing with the fallout of the previous generation's drama. I stayed silent, thinking that the real victim was Edward's actual grandchild, meant to be born rich, but swapped out maliciously. I was stuck at home for a month recovering before Serena let me return to my routine. Originally, Julian wanted me to stand in for a fire scene, but Serena refused. Nobody saw the accident coming. The special effects team messed up, triggering explosives early. Suddenly, flames were everywhere. Serena panicked and ran toward the fire. I grabbed her, yelling that it was too dangerous. She looked at me with a complicated expression and said Julian grew up spoiled and scared, so he wanted me to fill in, but she had rejected it. I couldn't focus on her point. I just knew rushing in without gear was suicide, so I tried to stop her. She shoved me to the ground, eyes red, screaming at me to get out of her way so she could save Julian. Serena's desperate move saved Julian with only minor injuries, but she was badly burned. Deep second-degree burns covered 20% of her body, mostly her face. After extensive treatment, she recovered, but her face was nothing like before. Even the beauty mark I loved was gone. I was heartbroken. Serena tried to comfort me, saying she was a director, not an actress, and didn't need her looks. I pushed her away in tears, telling her that her face was what I loved, and asking what I should do now that she didn't look like her anymore. Her smile froze, and she asked what I meant. I didn't answer, just wiped my tears and asked for a divorce. Serena couldn't believe it. She asked if I knew what I was saying, insisting I loved her too much to leave. Looking at her unfamiliar face, I felt hopeless, and admitted I never loved her, just her face because it looked like someone else I loved. Serena stood up, livid asking if I was saying she was a stand-in. She asked if I had seen her as a substitute all these years. I chuckled coldly and asked where she got the nerve to be angry when she had just used me as Julian's stand-in. She quieted down, then admitted that while she initially saw me as Julian's substitute, she had fallen for me over time. She asked why I couldn't fall for her. I laughed softly and said it was because the person I loved was too incredible to replace. I took Serena back to my hometown, City A. On a gravestone was a picture of a girl in her early 20s who looked exactly like the old Serena, down to the red beauty mark. Serena was shocked, asking if they were related. I told her, kind of. The Howards died in an accident years ago. Their daughters, Joanna and Anna, were sent to an orphanage. Joanna was beautiful and well-behaved, and a rich couple wanted her, but she begged them to take her little sister Anna instead. Anna ended up in City K with Serena's adoptive parents. That same day, the family who adopted me returned me to the orphanage because of my heart defect. Joanna poured all her love into me, a sickly child. To pay for my heart surgery, she worked non-stop as an adult. She died on my 18th birthday, hit by a drunk driver while crossing the street. In her final moments, she donated her heart to me. I kept this from Serena. Joanna had promised Serena's parents she would never disrupt their lives. I looked Serena in the eye and lied, saying she and City K were a world apart and couldn't be related, pointing out that lots of people look alike, just like me and Julian. Serena pursed her lips, her eyes filled with determination. She told me she had thought it through and was willing to be a stand-in. I shook my head, telling her she wasn't a stand-in because she didn't remind me of Joanna anymore. Serena started to cry, begging me not to be cruel. She grabbed my hand and noticed I wasn't wearing my ring. I pushed her hand away and told her I took it off the day she left me with a high fever on the roadside to find a dog. I told her she never even noticed, which proved she didn't care about me. Serena burst into tears, apologizing and promising to prove her love. She knelt in front of me, begging me not to leave. She offered to get plastic surgery to look more like Joanna. She offered to throw me a grand wedding. I shook my head and told her I just wanted a divorce because besides her face, nothing about her resembled Joanna. I moved out, and into a small apartment Arthur rented for me. I was surprised when Mr. Edward showed up, but not when he handed me the DNA test confirming I was his grandson. Even though Robert and I looked more like our biological father, Robert, I shared similarities with Edward's daughter, my mother. The reunion was calm. Robert initially didn't want Edward to find me, insisting I was dead, but his worsening condition and fear of death made him talk. On the day I was matched as a donor for Robert, Serena called me to say she was in Country H for surgery to look like Joanna. I tried to stop her, but she hung up. Back at the hospital, my grandfather pulled out a DNA test and revealed to Robert why he and Julian were a mismatch, because Julian wasn't related to him at all. He told Robert he was an idiot for cheating and bringing in a kid to replace his own son. Robert stared at the results, crying. That day, he made his will, leaving everything to me. When the will took effect, I trembled with excitement. I stole a glance at Grandpa, but he showed no emotion. On the day of the transplant, right as Robert was wheeled in, the doctor announced that Jordan, my pseudonym, had been in a severe car accident. A week later, wrapped in bandages, I went with Grandpa to see Robert one last time. He was skeletal. Grandpa whispered to him that the accident was a lie, and that he didn't want his grandson saving a scumbag. He also revealed that Julian was actually Robert's biological son, and the previous DNA test was a fake he had made to test Robert. The machines went crazy as Robert realized the truth. He died shortly after. Grandpa and I hugged, crying, and ordered the plug pulled. When Patricia and Julian arrived, they only saw Robert's urn. The will reading shocked them. Patricia screamed that it was fake. Julian backed her up. Grandpa handed Julian the fake paternity test, telling him he wasn't Robert's son. Julian was crushed and screamed at his mother. Patricia fainted. Following Grandpa's instructions, the scandal was posted online. The internet turned on Patricia and Julian. I trended again, but this time with sympathy. Grandpa's stock prices went up, and he gave me incredible wealth. By the time Serena came back from surgery, Julian had been blacklisted. Grandpa took back everything Robert had given Patricia. Overnight, they lost it all. To be fair, Serena's surgery went well, but I couldn't see Joanna in her anymore. When she showed up, I handed her divorce papers. She begged, promising more surgeries and offering me the lead in a new movie. I smiled and told her Grandpa had bought the movie rights, so I was already the lead, and we were replacing the director. While packing, I realized I lost the bunny plush Joanna gave me. I went to Serena's to find it and found Julian answering the door in my bathrobe, covered in love bites. Serena was stunned and tried to explain it was a mistake because she was drunk. I told her that her version of love was disgusting. Julian looked hurt, and they started arguing. Julian threatened to release photos of them together. I found my plush and left. Serena went back to South Korea for more surgery, which failed and ruined her face. Julian didn't care. He married her immediately after our divorce to secure a lifeline. He moved in with her and his homeless mother. Serena's career tanked, and she became miserable. On the film's premiere night, their domestic chaos made the news. Grandpa said what goes around comes around. I received another Best Actor nomination, but I wasn't happy. I went back to Joanna's grave and cried. Grandpa sent me to a therapist who reminded me that I had family now, and that Joanna gave me her heart so I could live. It was a wake-up call. I set up the Joanna Hart Charity Foundation with Grandpa. Seeing the smiling faces of those we helped finally gave me a sense of purpose. Joanna, don't worry. There is a long life ahead, and I will live it brilliantly.